This is the Brandon Smith Show. I'm your host, Brandon Smith, and the entire purpose of this show is one singular thing, and that is to help you live a better life, a little more free from dysfunction. And today, our topic is definitely down that path. It's a topic I'm particularly passionate about. Our topic today is helping you find purpose. So to that topic, I've got an awesome guest with us, Reggie Hammond. Reggie, great to have you here.
Hi, Brandon. How's it going, my man?
I am so thrilled that you can be joining us.
I'm excited to
Reggie
be here.
is like a purpose guru. So this is going to be a super cool conversation. Before I go too far down the path and the topic, Reggie, tell us a little bit more about what you do and maybe the 3-minute version of how did you end up getting to do this in the first place?
Wow. I hope you can make sense of it. So I am an empowerer. And it's interesting, I've gotten clarity around that even as recently as late, for as long as I've been doing it. Really what feels like all my life. So I'm from a small town of South Georgia, Albany, Georgia. Grew up one of 6 kids.
Which one were you in the 6?
I'm 4 of 6, but I was the oldest of the second phase, which is why I have oldest child.
Oh, gotcha. So you've got this, like, you fit in 2 different buckets.
Right,
I know what that's like.
Right, but we won't unpack that today, or we'll be here for a while. But anyway, grew up in Albany, went to Albany State College there in Albany, and then went to graduate school, business school at the Ohio State University.
Yep.
Go Bucks.
I like how you said the Ohio State
Well,
University.
if you know anything about Ohio State, you know the is very important.
It is.
Absolutely critical.
It is. I know why you said that.
And I appreciate the respect for it. Thank you. But anyway, coming out of Ohio State, I was really excited to start a career in consulting with Accenture. I was there. It was a phenomenal place to start a career. Just the breadth and the expertise you're able to build around businesses and strategies and systems. I've driven transformations for a number of crown jewel companies across the country, and it's just the richness of experiences that I've been, but so when I transitioned from Accenture and wanted to establish my kind of leadership profile, if you will, I launched the Atlanta office of a firm that was out of Charlotte. And so that was exciting because it was kind of entrepreneurial, but then it was also with the support and infrastructure of an organization that already existed.
Wow, that's really rare. That's super cool.
Right. So I got a chance to take a brand to a new demographic to a new geography that I really know and love, which is Atlanta. Focused on great companies here in Atlanta. Did some great work at AT&T, the Coca-Cola Company, just a number of great organizations that we know and respect around the city.
Yep.
And when they got acquired, for me, it was time to build the brand for an organization that I really had been framing up mentally for a number of years. And so I have always been about, and I encourage everyone to go through this self-reflective exercise that I went through. For me, it was looking at the experiences that I've been in and looking at those things that I was passionate about that weren't necessarily my job.
Oh, okay.
And so when I started looking at that, I can remember as early as just joining Accenture, like in year 1 or 2, always raising my hand to go do recruiting whenever we went to campus. And then 2 or 3 years later in my career, I was always either being approached or offering mentoring or coaching for other colleagues. And then even as my career progressed through working with a number of executives in a consulting role, beyond just the framing up new strategies or managing conversions and preparing for major systems integrations, I was always concerned about what this was going to mean for their career. There was always this agenda that I was tapped into. In a lot of cases, it felt like I cared more about it than they cared about it. But it was always something that was really important to me for people to be intentional about the work they were doing, what's next for them, how this thing that we're working on together contributes to where they're headed. And so it really wasn't until I kind of had this reflective moment for myself that I recognized that this is something that I would love to build a business around. Like if I can figure out that succession of stuff that I did that wasn't my job and frame up a business around it, that would just be amazing. And
Yeah.
and hence your crescendo was born.
I love that. So I love your crescendo because it just paints this image of how do you really have that for your life? Not just your career, but life. When I think about that, it feels deeper than just a job.
It is.
It feels like it's really deeply connected to your soul.
Well, anybody that has known me even before Your Crescendo formally existed will tell you I've been working for Your Crescendo for a long time.
Yeah.
It really is just a natural evolution of the work that I've been doing for some time. And I mean, and that shows up in a number of ways. Sometimes I'll talk about what I'm doing with people and they'll go, oh, you've been doing that for some time. I have a really funny incident when I subtly announced that I was getting started, and one of the people that I had been mentoring for a number of years gave me a phone call, and she goes, I hear you're coaching now for a living. And I said, yeah, I am. She's like, okay, go ahead and send me the invoice. Because I've basically been doing it for some time.
That's
but
fantastic.
for me, it was more than about coaching, and frankly, coaching isn't necessarily the thing that I'm precious about it. For me, it was more about helping people care enough about themselves and the impact that they are gifted to make, to frame it up, call it out, and to pursue it. And so really that's what it's been about. I've had the amazing fortune of working with a number of leaders to be really intentional and be strategic about themselves. All too often, we have really talented business professionals around us.
Yeah.
And what happens quite a bit is people bring those talents to the companies we work for. But what they don't always do is take those talent, that brilliance and ideation around understanding how to frame up strategies and apply it to themselves.
Yeah.
And it's if you have any conversation with people, it's not hard to get from them loosely connected thoughts about things they kind of want to do, but not often do people get intentional enough to sit down and frame up a strategy.
So I want to build on that because I think that's really if we can figure that out today and help everybody listening and watching today, that would be an awesome gift.
Well, let's do it.
To help them unlock that. So, all right. So I know I tasked you with trying to come up with what are like the 3 things that would help us move the needle on getting from where we're at today to getting closer to realizing our purpose or kind of that masterpiece we want to kind of create in the world. So talk to us. What would be maybe a good starting place? What's our first one?
As a hint, you already stole one of my words there. I'll come back to it. So I actually use these 3 things every day as a way that I hold myself accountable to the work that I am called to make in the world.
Great.
And they are very much connected to this notion of your crescendo. So, if you want to hold your nose a little bit for the branding around them, then please do so. But it's really important to me. The first thing is to find your forte. All right. So I want people it is important for you to care enough about you to figure out what your forte is and frame it up. And
when you say forte, what do you mean by that?
So, that's a really good question. But for me, a forte is where your passions meet your gifts, meet your motivations. And it is that trifecta, if you will, is where your optimal performance, like your most organic success happens. It's where you're doing things great and you're not even trying because it's naturally aligned up with who you are. It's where you're doing what you love to do, what you're really good at, and what rewards you. And then if you can take those 3 things and then plug them into your purpose, your calling, or something that really gets you jazzed or gets you excited about getting up in the morning and going to work, that's when celestial choirs are singing and you just can't believe the delightful life.
Isaac, the producer, just sings in my ear. That's my celestial choirs.
Well, I understand he's supposed to laugh. That's my goal. So
I didn't hear him laugh that time. I don't.
No, we're getting there.
I might not have made it. I might not hit the bar. Okay,
so find your forte.
So my experience has been, because I love those 3, and I think about those 3 myself.
Okay.
And when I think about strengths, that tends to be the easiest one to figure out because people will pay you for that.
Right.
Like, Reggie, you're good at this, so I'm going to pay you. And you're like, oh, okay, well, clearly I'm good at this thing. I get paid. Okay. But the other 2 require some reflection. Like, what really charges me up passions and motivators, right? Kind of that energy. what's a good way for us to identify those from your perspective?
All right, so can I go back and challenge a little bit
Yep,
on the
go for
strength
it.
side?
Yep.
So even on the strength side, I would agree with you. You can pay for somebody to tell you what your strengths are, and there are really great assessments out there. Gallup Strengths Finder, there's a number of them that are very similar. Ones that we use are, Strengths Finder is one that we kind of focus on. But what I have come to learn and appreciate is that strengths are often the one most difficult for a person to be able to express for themselves because they don't feel like strengths.
Yeah.
You're just being you.
That's
and
fair.
So they
natural.
show up in a way that really requires us to probably take kind of a 360-degree look at those strengths and how they have shown up with others for people to be able to acknowledge from work to life to home where your strengths have had the opportunity to show up.
I think that's a very important point. Because it's so natural, we don't always see it.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's at the University of Michigan. They have a group there called the Positive Organizational Scholarship Group, and so they study all this kind of basically positive psychology in the workplace.
Okay.
And they have a tool called the Reflected Best Self, and it's essentially it's like $8 or $10. I can't remember what it is. So download it if you want. It's pretty cheap, but essentially it's like a 360.
Okay.
But you email people. I've done this with clients. It's really awkward for them to do it, but it's great feedback. So it gives you a script, and you're basically emailing people to say, "Hey, Reggie, tell me about a time when I was at my best." So in other words, you're saying, "Hey, Reggie, tell me about how awesome I am."
Right.
And it's awkward for people, but it's great data because they write back and they tell you a story. So they're like, "Hey, well, yeah, Brandon, when you did this and in this situation," so you get context, you get strengths, and you might even get a few little values sprinkled in there.
And not only that, but that is, first of all, you got me at hello. I will be downloading this later in the day. Definitely want to take a look at it.
Isaac laughed.
Did he?
You made Isaac laugh.
Yes!
You get the points for today, Reggie. Reggie winning.
Awesome. But what I will also say is that it goes to this point we were making earlier about caring enough about yourself to invest in yourself and what your personal development trajectory should look like. And while it might feel awkward to go through this exercise of asking people how great you are, it's certainly important enough for you to do so if you want to frame up your absolute best in the things that you're doing.
Yeah, and I love that fact of don't be afraid of awkwardness.
Right. That's exactly
don't be afraid of,
particularly in the branding and the kind of positioning yourself for the right next opportunities. You kind of got to get over that.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so our first one is find your forte.
Right.
Okay, so what's number 2?
So the number 2 is compose your masterpiece.
Oh, a masterpiece. There it is. I had hinted on masterpiece earlier.
You gave it away.
I didn't mean to.
But it's a good one, so we can spend some time there. So now let's assume we got your forte framed up. We know if you were a building, we know what the blueprint looks like. That's how you should feel if you have a forte, right? If you've got your forte framed up. You got it, you're looking at it, purpose, passions, gifts, motivations is there. Now, if you compose your masterpiece, you can say, okay, now that I know what this blueprint looks like, what should this building look like in the short, medium, and long term? Like visually, if I were to bring a picture along, what would that picture look like a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? Those are vision snapshots. And then it becomes what for many of us is much more natural exercise of just kind of project management. Oh, if that's the vision, well, let me put goals, let me put action items behind it, and then let me make sure that we understand what that plan is. So that's your masterpiece. Your personal masterpiece is you taking the time to say, this is how I want this legacy to be built. Now let me build a plan for me to get there.
So when you think that short and medium term and long term, what's a good guideline for us? Does short term mean a year?
I always say 6 months to a year is short term.
Okay.
Sometimes you've got goals of, like, for example, if you're looking to navigate a career transition, you might say, I want to be out of here in 6 months. 6 months is what you should set for your short-term snapshot. Where do you want to be in 6 months?
And medium term?
Medium term is a year to 3 years, depending on year. Right.
And then long term?
5+ years.
Okay. Wow.
Right. And so that may not feel way long, but this is an exercise that should feel like a recurring activity for you. I always suggest you frame this up and then you revisit it once a quarter.
I love that. Okay, so we've gone really from figuring out what are our assets and motivators and passions and purpose to then really putting them into action with our short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Okay, well,
But
that's...
we got a plan. We haven't put them in action yet. You're still in my thunder again.
Oh,
All
well,
right,
whoops.
so-
Number 3.
So we got a vision, we got a plan, and now let's put them into action, Brandon.
Okay,
Wouldn't that
action.
be great?
All right. It's good.
But the third one is play your crescendo. So that's your
Play your crescendo.
hold your nose.
I
Yes.
know, I like it. I really do. I'm not going to do that.
No,
It's good.
but it absolutely, for me though, the importance and the significance of this play your crescendo piece is the play. Believe it or not.